Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kritika Dadich, your reader, and today I'm gonna read Legends of Pensam by Mamang Dai. So till now we had done first chapter, and today I'm gonna start the second chapter, that is the Song of Rhapsodist. In that, I will read two sub chapters. So the first chapter is Travel the Road. I never made it to the wish fulfilling stupa. Jules was in a hurry to get back to the city. I know that he was with her. So was Muna. Beside, there was much in our own group of villages that seemed to interest Jules greatly. He asked Hoxo and Rocket for places that he should visit. Rocket said, "There is one place you must take your friends to, the village where the Miglins had gone. He had an incident kinship with the village," he added, "and he could accompany us there." The village where the Miglins had gone, this, of course, was a figure of speech. The early decades of the 20th century were times of great upheaval when even our remote hills were opened up to the world. In 1911, a British political officer set out from the plains of Assam on a mission to explore the course of the river Siang flowing through the territory of the Adis. Noel Williamson was well known in the region, with 20 years of experiences in the dealing with the tribes in the hill tract of the country. This time, however, his tour ended in tragedy. An angry Adi struck him down in the village of Komsing. Other men of this tribe joined him, and then there was a massacre. No one is quite sure what provoked the attack. Some recorded evidence suggests a communication gap. The tribe feared that Williamson would bring troops to destroy its village. And another version says that the White Sahib had insulted a man who later followed him to Komsing and killed him. There are also accounts that tell of a scandal some years before this attack, a story of seduction and romance between a local woman and another white man following the course of the river. He had made her reckless and fearless like a hawk, and the tribe had meted out terrible punishment in retaliation. Perhaps it was the memory of this event that was the cause. Everything is conjecture. What is certain is that beside Williamson and his friend, a tea garden doctor named Dr. Gregorson, 47 sepoys and coolies were also killed. Only 3 men survived to tell the tale. News of the massacre sent shockwaves across colonial India and resulted in the punitive expedition of 1912, which became known as the Arbor Expeditionary Field Force. It was a fearsome column that hacked its way through the chaos of virgin forest to capture the culprits and send them away to prison in the Andaman Island. A memorial stone to Williamson was unveiled in Komsung, where it stands to this day overlooking the village longhouse. The villagers still look after the stone just as the British had instructed. It was an arduous climb to reach Komsing, Rocket said, and the village headman, an old and pensive man, believed that maybe it was because of the massacre that they were still without a road. On the day of the journey, the first rain pelted down and charged the landscape right before our eyes. We started out of the crack of dawn. Driving through the mist and shadows and water, we passed Pico town through a terrific din of hard rain on tin roof. We crossed rivers and streams. We crossed mountains of mud and slid across purple slush that made the car slip and slide frighteningly. When we reached the long bridge, Rocket signaled for us to alight. From here, we would have to walk. We looked across at the dense canopy of trees and wondered where the path was that would lead us to the village. Jules carried his camera wrapped in plastic, and Rocket lugged our bags. He looked at my shoes and rubbed his hands together and laughed. It was not the best footwear for the hills. Yes, but I said I would manage. I clung to the hard knots of cane as the bridge swayed wildly and threatened to overturn and spill us into the water. In my other hand, I held up the green plantain leaf that Rocket had fashioned into umbrellas for Mona and me. This is the longest footbridge across a river, and here, if you look down too long, you can feel the mighty Siang trying to pull you in by its very silence. Rocket lead the way, and in the painting haze of rain-soaked clothes, streaming faces, and trembling muscles, we crossed the bridge and began the long trek uphill. Halfway up to the village gate, we met a group of children marching back from school. They carried bright umbrellas and school books under their arms and watched us with interest. Hey! Rocket shouted. Who is your teacher? They said in him. Huh! I knew it. He's still around. Is he? The old great? The children laughed and stood to one side, pressed against the tree to let us pass. There was another excitement as we reached the village. They had prepared the moshuk, the village longhouse, for rest. They had lit a big fire in anticipation of our stay and for the long night of stories, when myth and memory would be reborn in the song of the Ponang dancers. They have not slept for many nights. If they close their eyes for a minute, if their souls stray, if they miss a step, then the journey will be over before it's done, and they will return to the present overwhelmed with a sorrow that will haunt them to an early death. The man who leads them is dressed in a women's gale and wears the dumbling, an intricate hair ointment that swings with the rhythm of his chanting. He is the Miri, the shaman, and the rhapsodist. Tonight, the dancers have arrived at the crucial point in the narration of their story, where they will travel the road. A man running through the forest. He was following the narrow trail, running barefoot and bare-bodied. Now and then he lurched to the right or the left, keeping to some hidden path that would take him to his destination faster. He crashed through the undergrowth and speed down a hill. Then he was running on flat land, then rising up again, and his breath was like that of a horse, whistling through his nostrils. This was all he could hear, his breath in his body like a hot wind that would suddenly fill every pore and vein to bursting and blow him away in an explosion of blood and bitter darkness. He reached the village after midnight. The longhouse was ablaze with the hearts of every clan burning brightly. The faces of his kinsmen turned to him as he stood panting by the door. They have crossed the river. Now the women dancing the story moved their hands in the unison, and clap softly. Where are they now? They are camped by the bridge. Those other men who had crossed the river were officers, and their soldiers and enormous mountains blocked their view of the world. But they had to struggle ahead. They were armed with guns and they led a line of porters who carried food and weapons and helped the force hack its way better and deeper into the jungle. Softly, softly, they must follow their terrible journey. Where are they now? They have reached the Aing Alak. The force had reached the great forest of bamboo that surrounded the foot of the hill on which the village was perched. A white man had been killed, a sahib who had come to the village bearing gifts, and now the soldiers were trampling the sad, disquieted hills and hunting the killers with all the might of the universe. Everyone knew it was the fault of the cowardly men who accompanied the officer. They had laughed in the face of the poor villager and said that he was a wild beast eaten up with disease who would never receive the attention or sympathy of the white officer. Why should anybody insult a man who was not looking for sympathy? Why should anybody look at a man with disgust when he was a man of the land and the other was a visitor trying to conquer the village with lies and bags of gifts? Why should anybody who had spat on a man's face lie? It was only a matter of time before the Midlands learned that all men were not afraid of guns and loud voices. All night, the men in the longhouse stay awake and waited. All night in the camp below, the officers planned and instructed their troops. One officer wrote in his notebook, "The forest is like an animal. It breathes all around us, and we never know what it will suddenly rise up like a green snake out of the decaying vegetation or descend on us like a mantle of bats reeking of blood and venom. The trees are enormous and sinister. They stand all around us, and you can feel them looking down and waiting. One fear to move. The pile of rotting leaves and clumps of fern are hideous traps. And yesterday, the stake that fly out from their injured three of our native men. Their feet have been slashed open and they are screaming that they will die because these fire hardened bamboo pangees are sharpened like blades and the points are dipped in poison. It is a terrible war, and I wish I had never come to record such terror and suffering. It was not yet light when a long shout echoed off the escarpment. A sound like thunder roared over the soldiers' head, and a hail of stones and rocks crashed down on the bamboo roof from the village. The bamboo exploded in a burst of wild dust as their stems cracked open and snapped into jagged splinters that could cut a man like a knife. The soldiers began scrambling up the rocky path. The stones slid under their feet and they grabbed desperately at roots and creepers. The path was still and treacherous, but the determined men were already halfway up to the village. When the roasters turned their perplexed eyes towards the still invisible sun, the sun had once cursed mankind. Every morning when I rise, someone in the world will die. Now the dancers sway and moon. When the soldiers marched into the village, the waiting men rose and stepped out to meet them. It was bitterly cold. The men of the village were wrapped in their white homespun and emerged out of the mist like silent, sorrowing spectres. They saw the weariness etched on each other's face. Where had they come from? Each wondered of other. Before the assault on the hill, one young soldier had remembered that it was almost Christmas Day. Across the ocean, he heard the city of his birth tinkling with music and gazed at the lights arced above the shop from where people hurried home to fulfill the dreams of their children. It was snowing in the city. Here, the ice glistened like steel and flashed on the village from the tip of the mountains. Here, even the town across the river from where they had launched their boats was so far away. The jungle cloaked everything. The twisted ropes of creepers and giant trees entangled in insidious embrace. Sometimes they had needed dynamite to clear the way. What world was this? And why was he here? An officer spoke an order. A gun blazed into the sky behind him. The dancers are still and hold their breath. The stone ramparts are poised to fall in an avalanche of boulders. Surrender is a kind of peace. The men of the village closed their eyes and recalled the symbols of peace: a broken arrow, a bent sword, the penitence of men who cut their bowstrings and threw down their spears to the ground. When daylight disappeared, the headman of the village called his people, and they stood in a group before him. It was a sad instruction he had to tell them. Every day from today, they would stand in line and pass stones forward from one hand to another until they had raised a tall cairn to the memory of the white Sahib who had been killed. Soldiers pointed with gun and the villagers assembled every day to mark the exact spot where the incident had taken place on the slope above the longhouse. A stone tablet with letters was placed on the stone, and for the first time the villagers heard the cry of Buggles as the strangers presented arms and honored the dead. The killing happened here, but the killers were from another village. But they were of our tribe. Yes, perhaps the white man was a good man. Perhaps he would have been welcome in the village. But destiny was written long before he came to these hills. Just as destiny was written for a man who struck the first pillow. He was captured and taken away in chains to the island prison across the black water. Two men, like an exchange of souls. One was surrounded by the brooding mountains and the other by the restless sea. It is almost dawn, and the dancers are still swaying to the words of the last invocation that claims all their attention. In a house by the river, a man and a woman awoke with the dawn breeze. Every day they had lain together and lived within old walls, shielding by the movement of big event that nurtured their strange love. Now time was running out, slipping away through their locked hands, escaping with the breath from their pressed lips and the light from their eyes. The man had come to map the wilderness and trace the source of a river. He was a political agent on a survey mission, and all he had discovered was that the river was a woman and that his soul was now forever drowned in the jade heart of water. What would come of this meeting? What exchange could be made? Lines would be traced on paper, a new picture would appear, words would be written, a story would come to life in song and shining ink. But no one would ever know the other words, the secret whisper, tender instants spoken at first light. The price of adultery was a bamboo stake through the heart, but the lovers had tasted everything already, the thrills of union, the pain of separation, and the unforgettable entanglement of the sense that was like a memory of dying. The dancers sigh and wipe their eyes. The fire burns brightly, and the shaman is a shadow man, leaping up larger than life. He has sung of the beginning of the world, of the sword of five metals that ignited the bonfire of the village. He has sung the story of his brother, the one who killed like a man and became a martyr, the story of the hawk women who defied a community to live in a house by the river. These are the stories, rhapsodies of time and destiny that he must guard. In the end, all we have is a remembrance. The sword rattles and the dancers sing in chorus. They have traveled so far, like a line of devotees, following the path of a sacred song across the ancient valley. It is a language that never ceases, and they sing because the hills are old, older than all sin and desolation and men's fascination with blood. The journey is almost over now. They are returning like a silent flight of birds. The shaman cries out. The beads in his hair glisten. The beads of the snakes, the beads of the woodpecker, and the beads of the first men and women. From the beginning of time, one by one the beads were crafted. Later, the old headmen said to us, they think we are a village of horror, but it is not true. The leaves of the orange trees glisten, the hills are radiant with the light of the sun. The laughing children tramp to school down the small same step of stony earth that the soldiers marched. They, these days, many visitors are finding their way here, and you can hear their voices asking the way. The curious Miglans shielding their eyes and asking for help to enter the maze of stories that the Miri remembered and restores to life. We are not a village of shame. When it was time for the meeting, the great shaman to depart, the dancers put aside everything that they were doing and gathered to see him off. They had been together for so many days and nights, traveling the road, guarding memory, and some of the younger dancers wept to see him go. Before he left, the shaman showed Jules and Mona the beads in his hair and explained that these would be removed by his wife when he reached home. It is believed the beads of the dumpling accompany every shaman in his travel during the long distance dance and protect him from a misstep and from faltering in the narration. Before he left, the shaman chanted a last spiritual verse in honor of the visitor so that they will understand our dance and why it is important to remember. he said to me. We sat before him to listen. In the beginning, there was only game, nothingness. It was neither darkness nor light, nor had it any color, shape, or moment. KM is the remote past, way beyond the reach of our senses. It is the place of ancient things from where no answer is received. Out of this place of great stillness, the first flicker of thought began to shine like a light in the soul of man. It became a shivering trail, took shape and expanded and became the pathway. Out of this nebulous zone, a spark was born. That was the light of imagination. The spark grew into a shining stream. That was the consciousness of man. And from this, all the stories of the world and all its creatures came into being. We are not here without a purpose, the shaman explained. Our purpose is to fulfill our destiny. The life of a man is measured by his actions, and his actions are good if their origin is pure. From nothingness, we have come to be born under the stars and Almighty Doni Polo, the sun and the moon, whose light shines on us equally, is the invisible force that guides each one of us. All life is light and shadow. We live and we die, and the path of destiny is the quest for faith. Then the Miri took the road out of Komsum under a sky bristling with stars. So now the first subchapter is done, and I will begin with the second subchapter, the heart of the insect. Every winter, men from the surrounding villages, perched on the highest ridges, set out on a journey to the snow mountains to harvest a precious root. This is the deadly acontium that is collected for the preparation of poison arrows. No one remembered for how long this annual trek had been a ritual, but there are many stories associated with the exertion, most of them narrated with the disbelief by the villagers themselves, who say they were lucky to return alive, back from the realm of silent waste and hallucination. An old traveler, a rhapsodist himself, told us of one strange and difficult track that he was a part of. He would remember it, he said, for the rest of his life, but it was up to us to believe or not what he was about to recount. The men departed in a ceremony of silence, stern faced and swift, disappearing from territory that was fenced and consecrated. Out through the protective arched village gates covered with sacred leaves and arrowed tipped with ginger. No one spoke as the chosen men traveled with all their senses, alert through the jungle of tall trees that shone ghostly white in the light of the bamboo flares. There were rivers hungry for lives, they knew, and mountains waiting to tear the breath out of their lungs. The bursting wind whistled and jeered around them, trying to steal their senses. The cooked rice that they carried turned to hard again. It was a terrifying journey, and finally they stood together on frozen ground and looked at the clumps of aconite that dotted the bleak landscape. They were in the territory of Dini Tayang, the lonely spirit who stir up the lake water and clutches trespassing men in an embrace of ice. Survival, as always, was a matter of courage and quick action. Blind and senseless with the cold, they accomplished their task and faced the most dangerous part of their journey. Addressing the mountains and the air, they turned in every direction and bid farewell with promises to visit again. They had to convince the jealous spirits circling them to permit the safe return. We will travel again to your beautiful land. Let us live in peace now. Do not pine for us. Do not call us back. We will travel this way again, bearing more gifts next time. Observing all the rules, the men packed up and departed. The last men in the line faced backwards and swept away their footprints to thwart any attempts of the spirit to follow them and come to dwell in the land of men. How swiftly they traveled, never looking back. If the god was kind, no harm would befall them. But danger awaited them this time. Like a bad dream, a soft ball of dust spun gently after them, skimming the earth. Constantly changing shape, the cloud gathered in speed and size and became a monstrous vision approaching fast to devour them. A strange light shadowed the land. The wind screamed, dust stung their bodies, and an unspeakable terror crossed their minds. Who could outrun the wind? Who would fight the air and battle with the mountain that circled them on every side? With pounding hearts, they broke into a run, looking up towards the village gate. They scrambled wildly over boulders and leapt across the gap, shouting at the top of their voices. One of the men turned around. Greater than his fear was the anger boiling in his heart, and aiming his bow, calling on his ancestors, he shot into the spinning darkness. They ran, fell, tore off their backs, and reached the gate. An eerie silence descended. Gasping, choking, they looked at one another and breathed deeply. Below them, a soft cloud of dust like smoke curled upward and drifted slowly away. This time, this time, the god had saved them. Calling loudly and throwing rocks before them, the people of the village descended to look for the single arrow. It was a strange sight that no one understood. The shaft was unbroken and unripe. Among the leaves and trampled fern, a praying mantis was dead, pinned to the ground. The arrow had pierced the heart of the insect. What did it mean? What spirit was this? For days, the men who had gone on the track were like pale ghosts wandering about in a daze. Then the villagers called a shaman and performed the prescribed rituals to ward off the danger that had followed the men to their homes. It is better to call the spirits. The old men told us to conclude his story. It is necessary to let the Miri speak to them so that the territory of men is safe from the jealous rage. Thank you so much. And that's all. Please like, subscribe, and share. Bye bye.